All right. All right. So here you have right here in New Amsterdam, which is New York, you have the indigenous people here. All right. Once again, look at the hair texture. The Lenape were the Algonquin. They spoke Algonquin. All right. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Banneker was from the Abenaki tribe, in which that was also part of the Lenape or the Algonquin people. And these are just the quote unquote native names that we utilize. Here it is, North American Indians. Look at the North American Indians. Don't look nothing like what you see now or have been taught to view as North American Indians. Here's some more pictures. And the sister, as you see here, is leading the discussion. She is up at this time. This is where Robert Rules of Order comes from. As you see, she's holding within her hand what would be symbolic to the one in which that will speak. And she's looking at the individual on the right who has up his hand in order to come forth, in order to give the interpretation. Similar today to when you see Negroes walking out of church and they got that one finger up symbolically. All right. Right here, you see how at one time we was connected as far as there was the corporation, which is the United States, and we was America. There was the United States of, and we were America. United States of America. United States do not have a superior position. We have the superior position. This is why they try and strive so hard to put us into a second-class citizenship, because we actually had a position above them, which was told to us by the Great Seal National Association of Moorish Affairs founder, or Clock of Destiny founder, or Clock of Destiny of the Great Seal, founder by the name of Charles Mosley Bey, or C.M. Bey, in which that he told us this within the Clock of Destiny 1 and 2. All right? He told us this within the Clock of Destiny 1 and 2. All right? So, keep that in mind. Here we are before the so-called United States Corporation. Now, this is George Washington, his staff, and look how dark the people are in which that he's talking to. We're wearing turbans, head wraps. This is the same thing in which that we notice on the Roots, a movie this past Sunday. This is where Prophet Noble Ali gets us wearing the head wraps. In particular, as you see here, these head wraps are red. Here it is again. You can see the word America. And once again, they're showing us this is a sister here with feathers. But look at her hair. Her hair is very curly, kinky. Not the straight hair Indian in which that we've been accustomed to. But she is indigenous. She is an aboriginal. And it's obviously right here in New York that they're showing you this. Because here's the Statue of Liberty right below. and they showing you this is the United States Corporation, the Empire State, and above is showing you the indigenous land. Look at the word indigene or gene, from the Latin indigena, sprung from the land. This is why we use the word indigenous. This is why they try to make something bad out of it, which is indigent, in which that allegedly means poor or can't pay for, you know, that type of nonsense. When even indigent comes from the word indigene, in which that simply means to spring forth from the land. As a noun, a native, literally inborn. Otto Chokdonges, native, indigenous, 1845, from Architon. All right. Here it is that we used to, I think we went over this last time, but we used to treat them real bad. They called us savages. As you see here at the bottom, it's called the savages. All right. And the reason why, of course, we used to scalp them. As you see here, we used to hang them. So now this is what we refer to as the karma stage. In order to get the Indians to behave and stop attacking European settlements, they told the Indian descendants that they came from West Africa. That's what happened. They started educating us and giving us the books. After the Reconstruction era, that's what the whole Reconstruction era was about, was to start giving us books in which that they control, and we just regurgitate the information. This is why it said, he who controls the education controls the lives of the people. Education happened to be one of the 9 battlefronts mentioned by Frances Quest Wells and her teacher, Dr. Neely Fuller. One of the 9 battlefronts, education. So we have to re-educate ourselves. Prophet Noble Ali said you do that by changing the literature. All right, Brother Taj is always saying about change the literature. And that's what we are doing. This is why we are doing these classes. This is why we do the radio shows, the YouTube or videos or lectures, is to help change the literature. The reason why I write my books is to help change the literature. That's what we have to start doing. And each one of us have that ability and actually have that duty to carry out. Right? This is the habit of Kuni Shakti, a Cherokee chief. Look at the original image. Now you see the altered image. They even changed the date. But you can't see is that he has locks in his hair, with a band around with a feather, a red feather, coming from his forehead. Chief Oshhawk. Right here, 1845 photograph, original. The European white version of whitewash. So this is what their whole construction era was about in the late 1800s. Was to change not just the books, but remember they had the Mohawk Conference. Now why call it a Mohawk Conference and then say we have to discuss the Negro problem if the Negroes were not the Mohawks? I mean, we seen Mr. T for years rocking the Mohawk, telling you that his ancestry was Mohawk. If you have a melanated couple and child, palm tree right here look like an alligator, so must be in Florida or near Florida. Here we have another chief and pointing at a map of America, telling you that that's where we come from. The complexion of Carolina Indians is black, not much different from that of the Ethiopians. They always compare us to the Ethiopians. He goes further. Their hair is black and thick and not very long, tied back to the head like a small tail. And for the physique of these men, they was well proportioned, minimal height, a little taller than we are. They have broad chests, strong arms and legs, and other parts of their body was well composed. They're broad in face and have big black eyes. They have a sharp cunning in aljaw, and swift runners. This is how those in the Carolina on the map look. This is us. Look at the hair once again. You see, this is another discussion here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Blue. When you mentioned the Ethiopians, I had researched the names of Africa. At one point, one of the names I found was Ethiopia for the whole continent.
Right.
Is it possible that they were referring to Ethiopians as being from the entire continent at this time? History?
Yes, but they also used the word for Ethiopians or Cushites was the word Cushite Moor.
Okay.
And so the word Moor became synonymous with being Ethiopian or Cushite. We went over that in the first class when we was doing a presentation, in which that we showed that even in the definition of Moor, it had the word Ethiopian. So Moor and Ethiopian was synonymous during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another picture of a native. Another one. And understand that these are coming from various books, from various libraries around the country, which that is verifying this. Right here, Bernard Shipp. There was, in the first, a very large black Indian of an aspect very different from those who inhabited the interior of the country. See, those who inhabited the interior of the country were the ones in which that I said was the plain Indians. Most of them were more Mongolian. Because remember, we told you earlier that the Chinese came here in 459 AD. All right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who came here, sailed here in 459 AD. But then you also had those who came down through the Bering Strait, the Mongolians, in which that, of course, becomes the Eskimos and the Aleutians, who were related to the Eskimos, which was also Mongolian. or Chinese, Oriental, Asian. Okay? So they were the ones who dominated the interior of the country. But the so-called, quote unquote, southern coast, east coast, west coast, along the Great Lakes, we surrounded them, and it was mostly us. Right? The barbarians of the coast are black in this manner. He says it right here. Because the sun is there warmer than elsewhere, because they are constantly in the water, which is salt. For the land being dry and sterile, they are obliged to fish in order to subsist. When the Indian has approached, so see, he's saying that they're black, they're Indian, they're black Indian. This is everything he's interpreting. Now, understand that this is from his book, The History of Hernando de Soto in Florida, chapter 8, page 472 through 473. All right. The top pictures from Florida's Constitution by John Ogilvy, 1671. Florida King, North America, 19th century. 1723, another indigenous drawing. So it says right here, when the Indians had approached the caravel near enough, he placed himself on the prow of his vessel, in a voice full of hastiness or haughtiness, told the Spaniards, according to what the interpreter asserted, that the Spaniards were robbers. What did they come to seek upon the coast, and that they should leave it in haste, otherwise he would burn their brigantes and put them all to a miserable death. See, that's the way that we used to be. That's why they called the savages. When my wife and I went to the British Museum, and we went across the street, well, up the street to the United Grand Lodge of England, one of the largest Masonic lodges in the world, the museum curator followed us, and he asked a question about how you feel about the possibilities of your first black president. And my wife, looked at him and said, there was 9 before him. Or he made the 9th one, something like that. And he jumped back like Mike Tyson hit him, literally, and his hands were shaking. And he said, who told you that? You're not supposed to know that. Did they tell you that? Now, who's the they? Well, he's talking about his so-called Pale Albion constituents, Masonic brothers here within the so-called states. Did they let the cat out the bag in order to let y'all know that y'all was Moors and that y'all landmass, that y'all indigenous to here and not Africa? Did they tell y'all that? Did they come out and tell y'all that there was already presidents prior to George Washington and that he wasn't the first president? And that he was like probably the 17th president? Because he was the 9th under the quote-unquote first under the Constitution for the United States of America, 9th under the Articles of Confederation, in which that came about 1781, in which that was helped written or proposed to be by John Hanson, who was the first president of the so-called United States Congress Assembly. And many consider him to this day to have actually been the first president, John Hanson. All right? We know that to be the truth. Now, the Olmec's black history in America does not start with slavery. The Olmec tribe is the oldest civilization in America. Archaeologists named that the Olmecs, meaning rubber people, because they were the first people that found to make rubber soles for their shoes and played games with rubber ball. They were originally the Dogon tribe. Remember we spoke about that earlier, who migrated here from Mali, Northwest Africa around 1000 BC. We say further back than that. All right? We say further back. 1000 BC is only 3,000 years ago. We're saying more than 5,000 years ago. They already had settlements here. And this is what brought, and we went over in the last class, this is what really brought Abu Bakr the second, the brother to Mansa Musa. He was an emperor, and he gave up his power, the gold, the wealth, in order to seek voyage, in order to come here, quote unquote, to the Americas with his brothers and sisters. In 1311, he let out 200 ships, in which that one came back, in which that told the tale that the captain said he seen them go off into the fog, into the currents away from them. He said they turned around and came back, but the rest of the 199 ships kept going. The following year, in 1312, going to 1313, Emperor Abu Bakr II, the Kiada II, says, I'm going to jump on the damn ship this time and take us there. And this time, 2,000 ships. 2,000 ships. So that's 2,200 ships. And people want to ask the question, how did we get here? I'm telling you that we came here. If you want to say that you just came from Africa, you did not come by way of the Albion. You came by way of Abu Bakr II, in which that it is stated that he landed in Brazil. That he landed in Brazil. And that's fascinating because Brazil is said, according to the slave trade based on Emory University, that 5 million slaves was let out there. And we know the Albion could not have bought that many. He didn't have the process of distillation. And the picture or drawing that they keep showing us is a drawing. That's it. And there are no ships in which that just less than 150 years ago, in which that they're found. They're talking about reconstructing or duplicating one in the African American Museum there in Washington, D.C. But they don't have an actual ship. So we know for sure that they did not bring the numbers that they are claiming. What they did were take the indigenous peoples that was already there prior to them coming, and they went up and down the eastern seaboard in particular, gathering people along North America coast, Central American coast, and South American coast, and switching them back and forth between the adjoining islands, having the adjoining islands as the breaking ground. But Abu Bakr came here over 800 years, right? 200 years before Columbus, in order to be with his brothers who was already here, as it just said, 1000 BC, which would be over 3,000 years. But if you read any books on the Olmecs, they say the Olmecs was already here over 5,000 years. There's new information coming out now in which that actually dates them back over 20,000 years. All right, so right here, the Olmecs' first settlement in Mexico, and known for their Colossus head sculptures. Each Colossus head was about 9 feet tall, weighed around 24 tons, and carved out of one piece of rock. These heads was found throughout North and South America. The Olmecs also built many of the pyramids in the Americas as well as mounds, as they became known as the mound builders, which are us. We are the descendants of them. But this is just a portion of African blood from many impacts, but there are people within our tribe, within our families, our clans, in which that demonstrates that most of us did not come from just Africa recently, at least not within the last 400 years. And what I've seen with Henry Louis Gates telling people that they came from Africa is that I'm not hearing about the markers. The markers should be indicating when we came. Was it before the 400 years of what they refer to as the transatlantic slave trade? Or was it after? You know, was it before? Or was it during? Or was it after? Those are the questions we have to ask. And he says the red man, or what is known as the Indians, did not exist in America until the 4th century, when the Chinese from Asia migrated here and mixed with the Olmecs. But the Olmecs didn't disappear. They later became who? Washita, Cherokee, Tunica, or Freemen, you know, Seminoles, Moors, etc. Or what we were known as Black Indians. Most of these tribes became the first slaves, prisoners of war, or POWs, and was now known today as African Americans, Black, Negroes, Latinos, and Hispanics. All right? The Olmecs are the fathers of American, or the mothers and fathers, actually, the mothers and fathers of American civilization. Right? Dean Augustine, present day Olmec man of Ko Believe. Olmecs were the first people in the Americas, and that's that's just moderately, and that's not the first people. It was the first civilization, or documented civilization, in which that is not definitely the first. We've been had civilizations here. Atlantis was a civilization, but here you have the African Americans or the Olmecs. Here you have the Seminoles, a group of so-called Black Native Americans who descended from the escaped slaves. This is what they're saying, and freed blacks who aligned with the Seminole tribes of Florida. Right here, this is what I was talking about. Here you have Fanny Camel, who is Ruth's mother, an Aboriginal American, and Ruth Simmons, first African American president of Brown University. Well, guess what? Finding out about roots, Fanny Camel mitochondrial DNA was proven to be 100% indigenous to America. 100%. Her female lineage had no African DNA and has been rooted in the Americas for thousands of years. You see, once again, these are the markings that we're talking about. Show me the markings, Henry Louis Gates. Show me the markings. Indigenous, Seminole, husband and wife, indigenous, Florida. You see a turban on the head. They would be classified as Moors or Melungeons. You have the Shoshone, Timothy O'Sullivan, another Shoshone, William Henry Jackson, to this picture. And this brother looks identical to John Amos. What is the real reason for so-called Native American boycotting the Redskin mascot? But that's because you can see the apparent connection here. Denzel Washington looking just like an indigenous chief. Brother here looking just like the symbol in which that trademark of the, I believe it's the Indian Cubs baseball. Snoop Dogg. Snoop looked damn near identical to the brother. Indigenous. Right here. Scottie Pippen. Look identical to the brother. Same nose, lips, facial features, forehead, everything. Right here. Another picture. Brother had his own TV show. But here, he looks just like a native. Because we are indigenous. Ray Pollock of the Choctaw Indians, or Choctaw, and Makita Davis. Aboriginal. The septum piercing was popular amongst Native American tribes such as the Shawnee and many other tribes of the Pacific Northwest coast. This is the Encyclopedia of Body Adornment by Margot DeMello, 2007. And it's back in style now. As you see here, comedians. We have a chief who looks just like this sister right here. Indigenous. The Shoshone Indians, as they was called. Silas Jefferson, Cree. Henry Leeds, Sioux. That was painted in 1913. There's more of a recent picture of a brother demonstrating his native roots, his indigenous aboriginal roots. I think some of these we went over. Here we have White Eagle and Rainbow, Sistisu, and they was doing some heavy things during the early 1900s. It's the Pamunkey Nation, one of the 11 Virginia Indian tribes recognized by the Commonwealth of Virginia. Powhatan. In early 1600s, John Smith explored the first permanent English colony, described the indigenous people that he was at war with on the eastern shore of America in Jamestown, Virginia, the Powhatan Indians, the Algonquin chief. He states, more like a devil than a man, with some 200 more as black as himself. This is 1624. Originally published 1624. The General History of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Islands. First Louisiana Native Guard, 1861. These are natives now. Look hard. Not the Indians you used to seeing in Louisiana. But we know that every time that you go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, you see the natives and they are indigenous people there, and they always are dressed in their native attire, and it's always quote unquote so-called blacks, Moors. But here, Pima and Dime, classified as African American blacks, Hispanic, Latinos, etc. You see here Moors, Indians, Negroes. When the Moors was driven out, thousands of took refuge in the south of France, who abhorred the Roman Catholic prosecutions, became Huguenots, and that of these many immigrated at a later date to where? South Carolina. This is from Harry Copy, History and Conquest of Spain by the Arab Moors. So when people say, "Oh, you ain't no Moor," well, guess what? Show them this book, Volume 2. It states that the Moors left Spain and came to South Carolina. Brief description of North American Indian: the complexion has deep brown tone, and they exhibit the common Aboriginal American characteristics, of course, black hair, brown eyes, and rather heavy faces. From the book of Native Americans, of Ethology and Backgrounds of the Native American Indians. Got the picture? Got the picture? Spence Johnson, Choctaw. Ex-slave stories, District of Vanderburg, interviewed between 1936 1938. The person interviewed is George Foreman. All right, location, Evansville, Indiana. County, Louisiana, Creole. It says, my two ancestors, John Hawk, a Black Hawk Indian brave, and Rachel, a Choctaw maiden, had made themselves at home such as only Indians know, understanding and enjoy. He was a hunter and a fighter, but had professed faith in Christ through the influence of the missionaries. My great grandmother passed the fact on to her children, and that has been handed down for 4 generations. I in turn have given the traditions to my children and grandchildren. He was Choctaw and who? Black Hawk. This right here is scary if it ain't. They look damn near identical. But they got on Pharrell about wearing the Indian, said so-called Indian feathers. The long one that trails down to the ground in the magazine last year or so. But yet, he looks more native than the so-called natives that is on the land. Like we said, 49 to 80% of them are not even native. They are actually Irish, Scottish, not even Indians. Uh-oh, there go Taj, Brother Taj, looking just like full-blooded Indian. Or African Americans are the full-blooded, or better yet, they are the pure-blooded so-called Indians. Cisco, Blackfoot, Blackfoot, Inuit, Inuit, which is Cherokee or Selegi, Chickasaw, Oneida, Cree, Red Dog, Yamasee Indians, and Yamasees also referred to as the Omo Carteret Kakin, or the Ama Sarisen, or the Amir Koryo, were listed among the 19th tribe as being dark complexioned, found and widely scattered amongst the inhabitants of North and South America. They were assumed to be immigrants from Africa prior to the European discovery of America. So how the hell would they know that? But anyway, whom Lucas Velquez de Alon persists in slave hunting in Beaufort, South Carolina. Sound like the same place, because in Beaufort, South Carolina, that's where the Gullah people are located at, who they refer to as the Geechee. This was in 1520. Alim referred to the Yamasees as Negroes, being valuable laborers. This is Carolina Genesis, Beyond the Color Line by Scott Withrow, page 65-66. Some of the so-called Indians at Indian Village in Michigan, St. Ignace. The brother over here look like Mike Epps to the right. The brother in the middle with the bald head look like my former teacher, Dr. Hargrove, in college. The Narragansett Indians of Rhode Island, also of Connecticut, as well as also what we refer to as the Boston area or Massachusetts area. Undeniable. This is the Algonquin tribe. This is the reason why our language is Algonquin, is because that's what we mostly were, was Iroquois Algonquin. This is the Algonquin. You have any mothers, fathers, grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, great-grandparents that look like this, and more than likely, you are it. And he said, Webster Universal Dictionary, 1937, edition, defined as American, an aboriginal or one of the various copper-colored natives found on the American continent by the descendants of Europeans. The following is the original application of the name Meru. Meru, just short for America, American. Here we have the various copper-colored pennies, in which that correlates to our skin complexion. and not those trying to steal our birthright. Here you go to the teachings of Ptahhotep, the oldest book in the world, by A.C.G. Hilliard III. The word Mir means the guardian of. For Meru, this is Meru right here. The owl and the mouth of Ra. Meru means the guardian. Here it is here again. The guardian, or the guardian of. The guardian of what? Well, you go to Stolen Legacy, the Greek philosophy of stolen Egyptian philosophy. George G. James, he tells you, in the 8th century, the Moors, native of Mauritania, Moor in South Africa, invaded Spain and took with them the Egyptian culture which they had preserved. Basically, they was known as the guardians of wisdom. So hence the guardians of wisdom. Knowledge in the ancient days were centralized, spread through considerable portions of Africa, ancient Minor, and which is actually Europe. So, you know, during the occupation of Spain, the Moors displayed considerable credit. The grandeur of Africa, let me go back. The grandeur of African culture and civilization. Now you go to the Celestial Ship of the North, written by Valencia Stratton, E. Valencia Stratton. Look at the word here, Meru, once again. And it says, the garden of the tree of life, the pole, the polar region, said to be like the seed cup of the lotus and the lotus of immensity. Meru is called the great wheel altar stairs by which men could climb heavenwards. At each step, a planetary heaven was established in their different cycles of time. Meru was also a name for the thigh, the matrix, or the mother occultist, who described it as the exalted mass of glory, the veritable haunts of the gods and heavenly choristers, not to be reached by sinful men. So what they're talking about, Meru actually means the backbone of the of Osiris, which is the Djid, which is your 33 spinal column, in which that you raise Kundalini up heavenly. And we became known as the Merus because that's what we used to do. We was the serpent people, named after Kundalini, serpentine fire, because guarded by the serpents. Hence, the Ida and the Pingala, they were the furious serpents, the winged wheel, seraphims, the 4 rivers, the cardinal points of the world, symbolized the 4 sacred animals, the protectors of mankind, who were the watchers over karma on earth. So who was the Meru? The Meru, or the Moors, are the watchers over karma on earth. This is why when you read in the Holy Quran, Surah 7, the Moors were known as the principles of light. They was the bearers of light. They was the ones who brought light to the world. Meru was the celestial mountain where the gods and the highest celestial beings dwelt. So to have the title Meru or Moor means that you was one of the highest celestial beings. That's why Noble Drew said, don't call them niggas, call them dirty Moors. Because they're not striving to be the pinnacle of enlightenment, as well as the mythical birthplace dealing with astronomy or astrologically, the celestial pole, the throne of Jehovah. Ru is the mouth, the outlet. Meru is also imagined as an island, hence Atlantis. This is how the island of Atlantis came into the situation. It was actually the Caribbean islands, and we was the coast of those islands, which we was called Atlantis, as we showed you in last class that America was once called Atlantis. A lotus and a tree, co-types of emanation from the water. it was celestial. So being called Meru or More was celestial, not just being the watchers over karma on earth, in which that earth is the land, in which that we tie ourselves back to land, because the word More also means anchor. Just like the soul is anchored into your land, which is your physical body, earthling. Hence you name after the earth. Okay? Ancient America. We come down. America is popularly supposed to have received its name from the mariner Americo Vespucius. Actually, Albertico Vespucio, son of Anastasio Vespucio, had the Italians sought immortality by christening the continent after himself, he would have surely have honored his family by calling it Vespucia, just as Colombia was named after Christopher Columbus. In Central America, the word Americ signifies great mountain. Remember, we just said that, evoking what? Meru, the sacred mountain in Hindu tradition said to be the center of 7 continents. Ancient America was linked with India. Why? Because they called this India, hence the term Indian. Hence, we have ancestry in the West Indies through the Lost Lemuria. The early voyagers probably believed America to be the native word for the land itself. So they too would use it. You see how they said America was the native name for the land? Vespucio comrades, instead of Albertico, would nickname him Amerigo. The Italian cartographer gleaned information about the New World from many sources and would surely adopt the native name for the country, calling it America. Some native tribes called the land Atlanta or Atlantis, echoes of Atlantis. You see? This is from the book. All right? This is from the book, Gods and Ancient Spacemen of the West. All right? You had, even for those who, how did Christopher Columbus come here? He was a spy. All right? He was made to spy upon, or he talked his way into spying upon the Moors. When the Moors left in 1492, some left and went back to Africa, but some came over here. They wanted to know what was it over here that they was coming to, and why would they leave Spain without a struggle? The last stronghold was Granada, Spain, and we left without a struggle. No battle. So he was sent by King Fernandez and Queen Isabella, who lived in a big red barn, not much different than the red barns in which that you see cattle and stuff in the south and up through the Midwest. But right here, Columbus had 2 captains of Muslim origin, Moors, during his first transatlantic voyage. Martin Alfonso Pinzon was the captain of the Pinta, and his brother Vincent Yanex Pinzon was the captain of the Nia. All right, now the other one was Pedro de Moor, who was called Peter el Negro. He was of the Nia, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. He was the head of the Santa Maria. All right, so he had all 3 Moors. Now, you go to the book, The Biggest Secret, by David Icke. Some say Icky, but it's Icke. The Brotherhood had known about the Americas for thousands of years, and Christopher Columbus was used to make the official discovery so that the occupation of the Americas could begin. Secret Destiny of America by Manly Palmer Hall. Christopher Columbus, who may have been an agent of esoteric order connected with Lorenzo de Medici and Leonardo da Vinci, English intellectuals Francis Bacon, and also Raleigh, Sir Walter Raleigh, who played unique roles in the court, all right, intrigue surrounding the settlement of the continent. So he was a spy for the secret order, and it was being sponsored and paid for by King Fernandez and Queen Isabella to spy on us. Right here, Columbus admitted in his papers that on Monday, October 21st, 1492, while his ship was sailing near Cabarra in the northeastern coast of Cuba, which he called Isabella, he saw a mosque on the top of a beautiful mountain. The ruins of a mosque and the minarets was inscribed of the Quranic verse that had been discovered in Cuba, Isabella, Mexico, Texas, and Nevada. During the second voyage, Columbus was told by the Indians of Espanola, which is Haiti, that African people have been to the islands before his arrival. For proof, they presented Columbus with gold spears of these African Moors, or as they refer to as Muslims. All right, so, all right, Ferdinand Columbus, the son of Christopher Columbus, wrote about the blacks seen by his father in Honduras. The people who lived further east in Point Gavendes, as far as Cape Gracios a Dios, was almost black in color. At the same time, in this very same region, lived a tribe of Muslim natives known as Hamami. The Mandinka and Arabic language, Al-Amami, was the designation of Al-Imam or Imamu, the person who leads the prayer, or in all cases the chief of the community, and or a member of the Imani, the word Imani, Muslim community. Now, Jack Forbes, in his book entitled Africans and the Native Americans, in 1524, the people of Carolina coast were said to be of dark color, not much unlike the Ethiopians. They keep comparing us to Ethiopians. This is how the trick came in later on, because these books utilize the fact that we look just like our African cousins, which isn't a bad thing. However, don't strip us of our land rights by telling us that we just came from Africa when you know damn well we've been here for hundreds and thousands, even millions of years. All right, so here, Croatan, you see here the word Moors. See Croatan Indians. The word Moors, Croatan Indians. All right, right here, the Croatan, where was they at? A village in 1585 on the island. They called it by the same name, such appears to have been on which sea lookout. The situation is on the coast of Carteret County, which is what, North Carolina. The inhabitants seem to have been independent of the chiefs of Secatan. It is thought the lost colony of land on Roanoke, all right, joined them, and the trace of the mixture was discernible to the latter Hatterat Indians, all right. So the word Moors and Croatan and Hatterat Indians, all of that was the same name. And look here, go further down. It says, under this name, they now have separate schools, provisions, and admitted to some provisions not accord to the Negroes. The theory of descent from the lost colony may have regarded as baseless, but the name itself served as a convention label for people who combine in themselves the blood of the so-called wasted native tribes. The early colonialists and forest rovers, the runaway slaves and other Negroes, and probably also the stray seamen of the Latin races from coastline vessels in the West Indies or Brazilian trade, across the line in South Carolina are found of people evidently of similar origin, designated red bones. In proportion of West North Carolina and East Tennessee can be found the so-called Melungeons, right? Probably from the French melange mix or Portuguese, apparently the offshoot from the Croatan proper, and in Delaware, found the Moors. And all of these are local designations for people who mix race with an Indian nucleus, differing in no way from the present mixed blood remnants known as the Pamunkey, the Chickasaw, which is Hominy, and the Nan Simon Indians in Virginia, expecting in the most complete loss of their identity. In general, the physical features and complexion of the people of their mixed stock incline more to be Indian than that of white or Negro. Journal of House of Representatives, 1789, 1790. Many of y'all have already seen this. However, it says a petition was presented in the House of the Sultan-Free Moors, subject of the Emperor of Morocco, and residents in this state. All right, and which the state? It was South Carolina. So this is what they just talked about. This is the first page of the Moroccan Treaty of 1787. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin worked closely with the Moors in the Continental Congress to secure this treaty. In the Bovan collection, there is over 200 letters to the Bey of Morocco from the Continental Congress. There were many Moors in the Continental Congress working with the European Masons, originally taught by the Moors to form a Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is a new secular order of the ages, and the E pluralum unum, out of many people and nations, one. All right, they wished. The Moroccan treaty is very powerful because, according to the Constitution, treaties are the law of the land. This treaty especially details with Moors. The question that may arise: how do we know what this, where the treaty say Moors, that the so-called black people of this time are being referred to? Well, we just showed you that it was talking about Moors here in South Carolina and North Carolina and Delaware, and what we just finished, and in Virginia. This is people on the eastern seaboard who was called Moors in that article that we just read. All right, Journals of Continental Congress, the Articles of Association, October 20, 1774. This is the time in which that they say was done at Liberty Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in which that 1774 through 1779 was when we lost our nationality, or we were stripped of our nationality and was given artificial labels. Right, it was during this time period. We know that Articles of Association was one of the four constitutions: Articles of Association, Articles of Confederation, Declaration of Independence, and of course the Constitution for the United States of America, not the Constitution of the United States or the United States Constitution. Those came later with additional Bill of Rights or amendments. All right. We were taught to believe that George Washington was the first president of the United States. This article is by United States Senator Charles Mathis, shows that it was an amalgamated Moor named John Hanson who was really the first president. If America declares its independence in 1776 and George Washington didn't become president until 1789, who was the president between 1776 and 1789 for 13 years? Well, here they are: John Hanson, Richard Henry Lee, Elijah Boatnote, Thomas Mifflin, John Hancock, hence the term, put your John Hancock right here, Nathaniel Gorham, Arthur St. Clair, Cyrus Griffin. Then you have George Washington. Hence my wife was saying, there was 9 presidents before him. All right. Actually, there was 8 presidents before George Washington in this case. The reason you don't hear about them is because, according to Moorish elders, they was all Moors and amalgamated Moors. And this is the truth of the matter. right? And there was even more before them because these were the ones under the Articles of Confederation. You don't even hear about the ones under the Articles of Association, the president. But here we have John Hanson, first president of the United States, served from November 5th, 1781 to November 4th, 1782. They only served 1 year. All right. On his site, 1773 to 1783, lived John Hanson, first president of the United States in Congress assembled. 1781, 1782. Born in Charles County, Maryland, April 13th, 1715. Died Oxon Hills, Maryland, November 22, 1783. It looks like. Placed by Historical Society on Frederick County, 1953. So when people say, where does it say that he was the first president? Well, right here. Also, in this book, the United States Constitution, and fascinating facts about it. And the reason why we're saying this and utilizing this is because, not to be name dropping, but Ali Muhammad said that that he was a European, and I have not found that. I found a picture in which that they whitewashed, but everything points back to what Hakeem H.Y. Bey stated. That he was melanated. And my 5th grade teacher, actually, my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Harrison, told us, I think it was the 7th or either 8th grade, but he told us that George Washington was not the first president and that John Hanson was. Interesting that in the same book it says that the word Democrat or democracy does not appear once in the Constitution. That's amazing because the Constitution is only speaks of a Republican form of government, but you keep hearing all these politicians talking about democracy when the word democracy comes from the word Democrats, which means ruled by demons. Some say that this is John Hanson. Some say that it isn't. Some say that he was the Liberian president during the time of Abraham Lincoln. But here on the back of the $2 bill, there are 2 melanated men. The one in which that is circled, which is John Hanson, and then you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the 8th, if I'm not mistaken. That is Benjamin Banneker, Ben Bey Emanuel Ali, Chief Justice, also referred to as Prince Hall. Here they are. The man on the left is John Hanson. The man on the right is Ben Bey. Ben Bey was born 1731, making him 45 in this picture, while John Hanson was born 1721, making him 55 in this picture. He's the one with the gray hair. Right? If you look into their Carter encyclopedia, you won't see either of these men, but yet it's on the back of the $2 bill. The names are not on the Declaration of Independence because they were both Moors who had their own government. We had our own government. We did not need to sign the Declaration of Independence because they was breaking away from the Britons and they needed our help in order to do so. We wrote the Declaration of Independence for them. However, George Washington and his cronies never actually severed the ties to the king, and they did not win the Revolutionary War. It was a setup to trap and totally defeat the Moors from the inside. What you were taught in school is called Reconstructed History. He's the fez of Ben Bey, which that is found in outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria at the George Washington Masonic Museum. John Hanson said this on July the 4th, 1776. They may stretch our necks on all the gibbets in the land. They may turn every rock into a scaffold. every tree into a gallows, every home into a grave. Yet the words on this parchment can never die. Now remember, they speak of a man who appeared suddenly in the hall, where they were signing the Declaration of Independence. All right, these are actually the words of the man that they're talking about, who was actually John Hanson. They'll never tell you who that man was, but it was John Hanson. And the crazy thing is that he's speaking Algonquin. He goes here: the British king may blot out the stars of Kakich, Manitou, the great spirit from the sky. Why, if he was an Englishman, or why would he be using Algonquin terminology for the great spirit, for the great God up above, as they would say? Because John Hanson was an Algonquin, Aboriginal, indigenous. He mentions the name several times through here. Right here, Kakech, Manitou. Down here on the next sentence, Kakech, Manitou. You come down to the last paragraph, the last sentence, Kakech, Manitou. He said it 3 times. Ritual. This is what they get in court today. Heary, heary, heary. The gavel being hit 3 times and all that stuff. Right? But right here, look at this. This is the Executive Order 1149-0, October 1969, called the King Alfred Plan, also put back out by Ronald Wilson Reagan, Mr. 666 man himself, the Rex 84 plan in 1984, in which that dealt with concentration camps, executive order. And basically what he says here, you come down and it says, this memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chief of Staff. This report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minorities will be able to put in the streets a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage. Huh? The minority is the so-called Negroes, African Americans, blacks, coloreds. But we are bound to the continent by heritage? And know that political asylum will not be available for him in other countries. The greatest concentration of minorities is in the Deep South, the Eastern Seaboard, the Great Lakes, and the West Coast. Same areas that we made mention of earlier. That showed you all them damn pictures. And so you go to heritage, look what it says. Heritage, look at the underword lines. It says right here, to inherit from, hereditas, inheritance, from heir, or an heir. Property that is and can be inherited. Something handed down from one ancestors or the past as the characteristics, a culture, tradition, etc. The rights. So heritage means the rights, burdens, or status resulting from being born in a certain time and place. Birthright. So the word heritage means your birthright. Look what it says in the Bible. The chosen people of God, Israelites. Well, guess who Adolf Hitler said the Israelites were? Or the so-called real Jews or Hebrews. He said it was the Negroes. This is Adolf Hitler. This is why when you watch the movie about the new movie that just came out called Race, is a movie about in the 1930s when Jesse Owens went to the Olympics. All right. And the movie shows you or talks about Adolf Hitler didn't shake his hand. Well, if you go and get the real quote of what Jesse Owens said, now this is what they keep showing this in every damn movie about Jesse Owens I've seen. They always keep showing Adolf Hitler as if he didn't like blacks or he had a problem with blacks. No, he had a problem with Jews. That's why he was attempting to exterminate them, allegedly. All right? Because he knew that they controlled the banking system and that they was control of finances. And that if America, and if they ever did that to America, then he knew that the Negroes would never come from up out of it, or will have a very hard time coming from up out of it. This is what it said. Go and read his quotes. And he speaks about the Negroes being the original Jews, or Hebrews, or Israelites. Heritage. Right here, every species of immovable which can be the subject of property, such as lands, houses, orchards, woods, marshes, ponds, etc., in whatever mode they may have required, either by descent or purchase. Thus, according to Prophet Noble Ali's statements, made sense, because according to the Holy Quran, Circle 7, the Moral Science Temple of America, most holy temple of science of the world, by Prophet Noble Ali. This is chapter 47, and it speaks of Egypt and the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. And it says the Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the Pharaoh of Egypt to settle and inhabit in northwest Africa. They were founders and the true possessors of present Moroccan empire. All right, now, all right, I have some people who follow Lord Abba, in which that he states that northwest Africa is not talking about northwest of Mexum, or Mexum, north of Mexum, or the five gates. Well, we keep reading, with their Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite brethren who sojourned to the land of the Canaanites, seeking new homes. 7. Their dominion and inhabitants extended from northeast and southwest Africa across Great Atlantis, which is the Atlantic Ocean, even unto the present North, South, and Central America. That's the empire. And also Mexico, who I showed you that was in North, South, and Central America, and in Mexico, and in the Atlantis Islands. It was us originally. So this is talking about us once again, before the great earthquake, which caused the continental drift, which that caused what we now call the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you don't believe that your civilization or empire came before theirs, because yours part of the Moroccan Empire, go to the Black's-Law Dictionary. Go to the word admiralty. This is deluxe 4th edition, the best one. Admiralty says a court which has been very extensive jurisdiction of maritime causes, civil and criminal, controversies arising from out of acts done upon relating to the sea and questions of prize. It is properly the successor of the consular courts, which was emphatically the courts of the merchants and the seagoing person, establishing the principal maritime cities on the revival of commerce after the fall of the Western Empire. Well, hold up. I thought you was in the Western Empire. When did it fall? I hear the Nation Islam and RBG and the Rastafarians all saying, down Babylon, down, down Babylon. You know, they all chanting Babylon to fall, which is supposedly the Western Empire. So, who is this? It says, establishing the principal maritime cities on the revival of commerce after the fall of the Western Empire, to supply the wants to the tribune that might decide causes arising from out of maritime commerce. Also, the system of jurisprudence relating to and growing out of jurisdiction and place of admiralty courts. So the Albion replaced our consular courts with admiralty courts, hence kangaroo courts, Article 1 and Article 2 courts. as there are no Article 3 courts really. The original was supposed to be in Philadelphia, which I haven't seen anyone go to and get in as far as documentation and to verify that. But we know that the original one was in Philadelphia because that was part of up under the Articles of Association, Articles of Confederation, which was what was called Unity Hall or Liberty Hall, excuse me, Liberty Hall. All right, but here, look up consular courts. Courts held by the consul of one country within the territory of another, under authority given by treaty for the settlement of civil cases. In some instances, they would be also criminal jurisdiction, but in this respect were subject to review by the courts of the home government. Well, who was the home government? Let's look. The last of the United States consular court was who? Morocco. So what was the fall of the Western Empire? Morocco. Once again, right here, Noble Drew Ali said they were the founders and the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. Once again, last of the United States consular courts, Morocco, was abolished in 1956. They just abolished your court. Just abolished it in 1956. All right. I'm going to leave it there for tonight, and we're going to come back and we're going to finish it up. Any questions on anything before we go? Is everybody understanding this a little bit better now? That your empire was prior to this one, and the only thing that Albion did was inherit it, and he didn't inherit it through actual being heirs, because heired land can't be sold. But he did it through conquest, destruction, genocide. Right? So their own Black's Law Dictionary verifies that Morocco was the last Western Empire prior to this one coming about, and that it was just abolished as far as the last court was just abolished in 1956. This was during the time of President Dwight Eisenhower, who happened to have been a mulatto, and more. Or quadroon, as they say, because his mother allegedly was a mulatto, which you can actually go and find a picture of his mother, and she looks Moorish. Okay? Yeah, America is all yours. Yup, funny. 1956 is when Kingdom of Morocco was established, right? And then 3 years later, the flag on which that Prophet Noble Drew Ali flew was given to them. So when the president of Indigenous Affairs of Morocco came and spoke to us at the United Nations back in 2007, this is what he said. We are on your land. We have your flag. This is what he said. We have your flag. And he was speaking French, and the interpreter was telling us in English what he was saying. Right? So they know they are the kingdom of Morocco. Right? We are the empire of Morocco. Al-Maroc. And their own shit tells us what's going on. We just got to read in between the lines like we just did. Okay? All right, we're going to come back here again on Monday. If y'all have any questions, email me or ask me then. Let's stick to out of commerce. We'll get to commerce very soon. But I want to deal first with this understanding, understanding about you, yourself, who you are, right? And the connections between all of this information. There'll be enough time, I promise you, for commerce. You ain't got to worry about that. All right. When I get to commerce, some of y'all think that this information is hurting your head. You ain't get to nothing yet. All right. Because by the time I get to the UCC information, that's over 19 different documents that you're gonna have to learn. You said who's the Moors that was so called called dirty? Anyone in which that tried to conceal the information from us. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Henry Louis Gates would be some of the people nowadays in which that Booker T. Washington spoke about back in the days. As a matter of fact, Booker T. He had a quote in which that I want to make mention of. This is what he said. He said, there is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the subtle habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negroes to lose their grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. These are the dirty Moors. Whoever does that, who's not telling the goddamn truth, and keep hawking on the victimization. That's why a lot of these cats are suspect that's out here talking about the RBG, as if our flag isn't red, black, and green too. The 5-pointed star with the green background and the red, and the cherry red background and the black border, that's red, black, and green. Remember, the forerunner of Noble Drew Ali was Marcus Garvey, red, black, and green. You never stop utilizing those colors. Those are the same colors that the ancient Egyptians utilized, in which that symbolized resurrection. All right. I'm gonna talk to everyone later on, and we'll see everybody here on Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace, y'all.